Check 1, 2, check 1, 2, 3. Now it is. Check 1, 2, 3.
Okay, I see closed captioning coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just sorry the audio was out there for a little bit. We didn't really say anything important. I'm kidding. We apologize for any inconvenience, but the minutes will capture the content of the conversation until this point. Councilor Nielsen.
So at our council meeting, one of the things was brought up is that we understand the severance, but one, I think it was Councilor, was it Lehman brought up about there's no protection for the city, that he just isn't just up and I'm not coming in tomorrow and I'm done. I was looking at there was a piece on the section 4 of that document about section 4 of the, what is this called? Employment agreement, about requiring employee may terminate this agreement by providing a minimum of 30 days notice of employee voluntary resignation subject to so on and so forth. Could something, I didn't always see, I saw those in a few contracts that I looked at online. Is something like that, I mean, to give some protection and time for the city to have, if Chris were to decide to change employment suddenly, would that
well, we don't have slavery anymore. So
No.
just make people work
No.
places they don't want to.
But giving notice, having a 30-day notice in preparation for replacing.
Yeah, I think we have that in there. It's a 30 days notice. It's on the next page. Second paragraph. The event the city manager voluntarily resigns the position.
Totally missed that. My fault.
Should give the city council 30 days notice.
Okay.
One thing
Doesn't have the buyout clause that
Right.
Councilor Lehman had brought up.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't see, did you find in my, if it's all right, can I ask a question? In looking at other contracts online and the ones that LC and talking with them, I didn't find any that had a buyout. And I looked through several, and were you able to find any? Yeah,
I think it would be a really hard thing to do. You can't require people to pay you out of their paycheck, so it's not like you could withhold some amount out of their final paycheck, and that's
right.
It would be a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, I was just looking at that because it was something that Councilor Lehman had mentioned, that we should remember that part. That and I wasn't able to find anything.
I think he was thinking of sports contracts.
Yeah.
This is a different sport.
Well, Chris is an athlete.
There is some language in state law for police officers that if they go to training on your dime and they leave early, I think it's within the first 3 years, the receiving entity, if they're in Oregon, is supposed to pay you back for that. That's actually kind of hard to enforce, and a lot of times people just last until the 3 years is up.
I think we've had one in my time here. I think we've had one where we got some money from Benton County because they got one of our employees a little early.
Right.
And they were happy to pay it.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it's a deal.
Get an officer.
Yeah.
It's a lot cheaper than paying for training.
So one thing in here that's not in here that would protect the city manager, I saw it somewhere else. I guess there's clearly been an example where a city lowered the pay rate to an obnoxiously low amount to force someone to leave. That's not in here.
Yeah, I believe there's language in the ICMA sample one that refers to, short of giving a no cause or termination, that there would be other things that would trigger the payment of a severance.
So, anyway, I just mentioned it in case it comes up. So anyway, I think it's important to protect the city manager, but also protect the city. And I also think it's also, it would be really, I don't really want to be the mayor if we had a council or a city manager position open. It seems like a horrible situation to be in. But, and given the challenges, I just want to recognize that given the challenges of hiring well-qualified, experienced city managers, that I personally would rather avoid that if possible, as long as we're happy with our current manager. And given positive performance evaluations, I think a lot of this is somewhat reasonable. So if not reasonable, Councilor Andrade.
I don't disagree with any of that, except with Councilor McMorrin's point of just being philosophically against these kinds of payouts.
Oh, yeah.
And so I don't feel comfortable with this section.
Which section are you talking about?
3.
I'll just tell you,
Or I should say the part about the severance.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
so you're not going to find a city manager to sign an agreement with you without a severance package included, because it's not an elected appointed position, which is very different at the state level. For an elected appointment, it's very different than a city manager, which is a professional appointment and an employee contract. So there is a big distinction. I get where Councilor McMorrin was going with that, but when you're a appointed position appointed by the mayor, by the governor of the state, that's much different expectation of what the duration of that job is going to be than when you take the job as a city manager. So I would not expect a severance package at all, because as soon as the governor's gone, the new governor's going to come in and they're going to reappoint somebody to my position. As a city manager, that is not my expectation that when there's a new election that I'm going to be out the door. That is not my expectation. So
Definitely not. I am just fundamentally against them regardless, and think that if any protection should be given, it should be given to those who are lower in the hierarchy of jobs.
Oddly, if they are within collective bargaining agreements, they probably have more protection than your city manager does. The process for discipline and termination is pretty clearly set out, and it does not work in favor of employers generally.
Yeah. Councilor Guzman?
The signing bonus on section 4, is that atypical in regards to, and is this something that will be setting a precedence that every contract therefore following this contract will include a signing bonus?
The one thing about this sign-on bonus, I just acknowledge, is that it's basically in lieu of giving a one-time increase to the wages that he's currently seemingly due based upon the salary survey. So to me, it's a much lower cost than just matching up with what the salary survey would suggest.
Correct. And I understand that. I just mean, does that mean that we're putting in that there must be a type of signing bonus in upcoming contracts?
No, that would be negotiated each time. I would probably not call it a signing bonus,
Yeah.
but we'll come up with
retention bonus.
It could be a retention bonus. It could be really an acknowledgement that based on salary surveys, we're not paying the city manager what the city manager should be paid. And there's an advantage to the employer in doing a one-time cash up front as opposed to having that base set for future incremental raises. It's a pretty gracious thing to have your city manager offer.
Absolutely. I just want to see that this isn't something that has to be a part of every contract in the future. There's nothing that makes that required.
That's correct. There's nothing that it doesn't extend beyond
we
time.
could say a one-time retention bonus of XY. And that would, in future contracts, when you read it, there would be no expectation that would be a repeated thing.
Sorry for all the questions. It just helps me understand better.
Oh, good questions.
That's the whole purpose.
Yeah. Getting back to Councilor Andrade, given the nature of this work and the types of positions, I don't see that not having a severance package would be a realistic option. And so, for that reason, we can talk about it more, but I don't really see a lot of value in talking about it more.
If we can't get rid of it, then I would like to reduce it back to 6 months.
And what was the language that was previously? It seems like it was up to.
It's 3 months and then 1 additional month for
Up
every
to 6
additional year
months.
served up to 6 months,
6 months. And right now you've been with us for how long?
9 years.
So it'd be 15 if we didn't.
So,
So being as it's 15, I think 18 is reasonable. And personally, I think with,
It's very hard to walk back.
it is,
Something you've already given to somebody.
yeah, that's what I think as well. That's just I guess a perspective I have individually of the value and the uncertainty in which this role is fulfilled.
and I mean, right now we do have it capped at 6 months because of that,
And it
the
was
6 month cap.
It would be 12, would it not?
No, these 6.
There's a cap in there, I just didn't.
Okay, oh, yeah, okay.
I didn't get across the pages fast.
But I also agree that after having someone in this tenure for a long time, 9 years, a long time, that it would be good to make it so that it would be a little bit more of an issue to cancel permit. I mean, this is for termination without cause, right? Like, this is for something that has no reason to occur except for like politics. So
I think it was the city of Winston, there's an audio online of their council meeting where somebody says, I was looking at this and says we can terminate the city manager at any time that we want to. And yeah, can. Okay, I move that we do that. So I seconded it, all in favor. And then there was this pause while the city manager said, I'm going to excuse myself because I think I've just been terminated. And then the mayor who was presiding said, I don't know how we're going to do any of the rest of our business. We don't have anybody here to do it. And it's a very awkward thing, but every once in a while, people bring that up. I will say, Bowman has had that situation with the prior city manager, and at the beginning of every meeting for some period of time, there was a motion to terminate the city manager. It was always seconded and never passed. And there was a motion to terminate the city attorney. It was always seconded and never passed. But that was a standing motion at the beginning of each meeting.
standing agenda item, huh?
Yeah.
The last thing I'd say on that, Councilor Andrade, is I get where you're coming from. I recognize it. I guess I just look at my perspective. I don't see anything in here, and just generally speaking, but specific to this, there's nothing in this contract that I feel isn't in the city's best interest. There's obviously my own interest in this as well. But I do think if you get to a position where you've got a city council that's not happy and has made it known that they're not going to be willing to work cooperatively with the city manager, then having a larger severance there also allows the city to go ahead and walk away without the city manager putting up much of a fight to stick around when he's not wanted. So, at 6 months, I'll just be point like at 6 months, I would fight for my job because 6 months is not going to be enough time for me to find a new job, relocate, get up and get going. At 18 months, I'd probably be willing to have a conversation about, leaving the city on good terms and saving face for the city manager, saving face for the community, and walking away. So 18 months does provide the city an option to have a city manager leave on good terms. 6 months won't do it. 12 months probably wouldn't do it either. So, there is a benefit to the city of having a number in here that's attractive enough for a city manager that they're willing to leave if they're not wanted anymore. So that's kind of why that 18-month number is in there, as opposed to 6 or 8 or 10 or something smaller.
I understand these things and at the same time have concerns about, like I stated before, just about what I stated before, as well as potential unfunded mandates, like I don't expect the council to get rid of the city manager anytime soon, if ever, prior to retirement. But I think just the principle of it is, it just makes me worry,
Thank you.
especially because like probable cause, not probable cause. I feel like there's that blurriness there, and I don't.
And the higher the severance package is, the more blurry that can be, and the city manager would be more willing to leave if it's blurry. So, yeah, I think the same argument holds true against your argument, but we don't all have to agree on that one either. So it's a number. I feel like it's fair to the city and to myself as a city manager, and that's kind of where I'm at.
In the next paragraph, we give the 30 days notice. Personally, I'd like to see it bumped up to 60, just to give us more assurance that you don't just walk on us.
If Councilor Andrade can agree to the 18 months, I can agree to the 60 days.
What if we split the difference? 12 and 45.
That's the way negotiations work.
I was negotiating at 60. I went from 0 to 18. Yeah, I mean.
Or would you be willing to do the one-time, add the words one-time to the bonus? If we talk about the signing bonus or whatever it's going to be called. Could we add the one time to that part of your?
Well, I don't think that gains you
necessary.
anything. I'm fine with that language. I don't think that's really, because it's always one time. Every time I have an open contract right now. The only reason the contract's coming back in front of the council this time is because the salary compensation shows that I'm well under where the market is and where I should be. And so these other things are things being fixed on there. The one-time retention pay is a kind of in lieu of the fact that, again, I'm not looking, as has been stated, I'm not looking to go to market. I know that would be a hardship on the city because I care about the city and I'm looking out for the city's financial best interest as well. That's going to be staggered in over the next several years at this position. And so, that was really just a way to recognize that that's being done. So I'm that language is fine. I'm happy to put one time in there, but again, I don't anticipate coming back to the contract again unless we get out another 5 or 10 years and we find out that something else is out of skew, out of wampus. So I don't want to take that necessarily there. But honestly, the 60 days is fine because realistically, as Jim said, if somebody's looking for a city manager now or even 5 years from now, I don't see that changing a whole lot. And I think that they're going to be happy to sit on the right candidate for, 30 to 60 days as opposed to just a quick 30 days. And again, I've got a house to find, a house, family to move, all those other things. So I'm fine with the 60 days there. I'm pretty set on the 18 months. I feel like that's a fair number, so I'm not willing to move on that.
In section 4, just going down here, there's the bump in the salary, which seems reasonable given the salary survey at this point. We have the.
Can I speak to salary just briefly?
Yeah,
so that salary, again, just recognize the city council just approved the salary schedule for all other employees. That was essentially every employee in the city at this point, other than those, there's a few positions that are capped out right now. They're at the 7, they're going to stay at the step 7. So they won't be eligible for another step increase. So there's only a few of those, as in I think 2, maybe 3 in total, but I think it's 2. Everybody else with the new salary schedule is down on that schedule enough where this year on their anniversary, they're going to get a 5% pay increase. And then we've also approved, the city council approved a 4% cost of living adjustment. So every employee other than the 2 that are already at the highest end of the pay range right now are going to be getting a 9% pay increase this year between the step increase and the cost of living adjustment. That's what I'm asking for. So again, I'm not asking for anything more than the other employees are getting. I'm asking for the equivalent of a step increase up to the new step 3, and then that's 4% cost of living adjustment. So it's a 9% increase for me. That's, again, I'm trying to be consistent with other employees. And frankly, I wouldn't put myself up as getting a 25% pay increase while everybody else is looking at a 4% cost of living and a step increase, right? So we've always tried, and we have a long history of being very consistent that management's not sticking it to everybody and the rest of the employees are just getting whatever the rest of the employees get. My salary and my compensation, my benefits package is very reflective with some small nuances and small differences, but for the most part, it's very reflective of what most other employees are getting. At the very least, it's very reflective of what other management employees are getting. And that's true in the salary as well.
If we sign this agreement at the next city council meeting, would you get another step increase on July 1?
No, this would be the step increase for July 1. So this is my anniversary is in April, just celebrated it, but I've been getting my step increases in July, although this last year didn't because I was already capped out. So this would be my July pay increase. So this would be effective July 1, would be this number.
Good question.
In that same paragraph on compensation, it specifies the 4% cost of living adjustment for 2023 does not state it in every year moving forward. So the council would be choosing that next year again.
Yeah, so with part of my, well, let me think of that.
It's the second sentence. So
yeah,
it's for the updated schedule would be this amount, which includes a 4% cost of living. Future step increases are effective July 1st, beginning of 2024, if there's a positive.
So this would be one that's a little bit different. The city council just approved the salary schedule for city employees, including a cost of living adjustment for the next 3 years. That was just wrapped in. So we won't be coming back to the council asking for a cost of living adjustment going forward. We'll notify you that CPI was 2.8 or whatever. So this is what the new schedules will be. My position, I will be coming back for and be looking for, after my performance evaluation, then I'll look for a step increase in cost of living adjustment equivalent to what all the other employees are getting essentially.
Right. Any response to any of that? Okay. Going down to section 6, it's the accrual rate of vacation and sick and executive leave. I couldn't find this exactly, but are all those things, I saw that the sick leave is maxed out at 360 hours. The vacation leave is maxed out, I think, at 336 hours in the employee handbook.
Right. So so all the max amounts are going to be the same as what all employees are given within the employee handbook. So those, I'm not asking for new variance there.
Executive leave? Executive
leave is only for me and the directors. My directors get 4 hours per month for attending their meetings. Sometimes they come to a council meeting, but not every council meeting. Sometimes they'll have a public works committee meeting after something. So they get additional 4 hours.
Is it
I'm at 8 right now. It caps at 40, I think. I think the most they can accrue is 40 at a time.
Is that in the employee handbook?
Yeah, should be in there.
Okay.
So my cap would stay the same. I would just accrue a little bit quicker in recognition of all the evening meetings that I end up attending.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was just wondering how big that cap was.
Yeah, it's at 40. So
okay,
that tends to be where I pull from most often. If I got to take a half day or take half morning, come in late or something like that, I typically pull it from here. That's not a vacation day. Obviously, it's not a sick day. So it's before I touch my vacation, I'm usually using this as that primary source of flexing my time. Well, not technically flexing, but this is where I'm drawing from for that leave time.
Sure. Are there any concerns on that section? Knowing that there's a 40-hour cap, that kind of alleviates some of my biggest questions here. Go ahead.
I mentioned this at the council meeting that we should delete at a minimum in that first sentence of section 6, because it just kind of, by having that in there, it makes it seem like the city manager can take more than what the highest rate is.
Yeah.
And the maximum rate right now is 14 hours per month?
Right. Sorry, maybe 14.2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chris, moving at a minimum.
That's fine. And I will note this was one section in the survey, if you look real close, the city as a whole, our vacation compensation is fairly low compared to market. Not uncommon to see at the high end numbers in the 16 to 24 range. 24 typically being like 20-year employees or so, but even at the 10-year mark and the 12-year mark, we're 2 to 4 hours lower than the market right now. Our unions didn't negotiate that very hard with us, and we didn't put it on the table either. And so we just know that we're a little bit low there. I'm fine with the 14, but I'm even lower than that currently. So I think getting me to the 14 is fair.
It doesn't seem like anyone has an issue with it. Anyone have an issue with the cell phone stipend language? Go ahead.
I think that this doesn't get rid of that ethical ambiguity. It just means that it's going to be transferred, that ethical ambiguity is going to be transferred to the personal phone instead of the work phone, as opposed to splitting things out as fast as possible.
No, I can use my personal phone for work if I'm just getting compensated for it from work. Right now, I'm using my work phone for a lot of personal stuff, which I don't like doing. That's the difference. So
I guess my point is that that's something that is on your end to control, as opposed to taking them both, like taking both personal and work calls on the same.
Right. I agree. I could have a second phone and only do work on my work phone and only do personal on my personal phone.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that when my phone calls, I don't know if it's personal or work, because people in this community have both numbers, or they would have both numbers, and they're going to call me and get a hold of me either way, whether I'm at work or it's personal. The reality is, in a small community, when my phone rings, I pick it up and I answer it. And I can give you a list of 20 people that call me either on my work phone here or on my cell phone, and it doesn't matter if it's 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock on a Saturday or whenever they're going to be calling me. So to me, it makes sense to have a phone, and if I can have it be my personal phone, be stopped for the city, that puts me in a better situation.
From a legal perspective, that's correct, because this makes it clear that that is a taxable benefit that he's receiving as part of his compensation package. The other way, then it's receiving a benefit, but it's not reported in order for taxes, and we haven't monetized it in some way, so we don't know what the personal benefit is. By doing this, we can remove the personal benefit, and we've monetized, here's what it's worth for you. Use your stuff for business.
I wanted it set up this way originally, and we didn't have other employees that were doing this, and so was pushed back on by our finance pretty hard to not do it that way. And so I'm fixing it now.
It creates an additional taxable event that's got to be reported. So
I might add that the irony is, if someone tries to call him on his work phone and they don't get an answer, they immediately will turn around and call him on his cell phone. And the reason he probably didn't answer on his work phone was he was probably talking to somebody. Having two phones is problematic.
Yeah. Well, I will propose that we send this to council with these amendments. Go ahead.
On section 8 of, was there a reason that it was deleted, the conferences training outside of Oregon shall first be approved by city council?
Yeah, and here's the story. I have been attending the ICMA conference, International City Managers Association conference, every year. Mm-hmm. They've had it in Portland twice now in the past 20 years. It's always in another state. Mm-hmm. And I'm typically making plans for that well in advance, and when I remember to come to the city council and ask. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I'm spending money before I've got permission. So I'm just telling you up front, I'm going to go to that conference every year. It's out of state, and I'd like to not have to come to the council 2 months after I've got my tickets before I ask permission to go out of state for a conference. I've already got permission to attend the conference. There's just this little weird caveat that if it was out of state, I had to ask for permission first, which I would do. If I'm going to go out of state for anything other than the ICMA conference, then I would let you know. Again, other than it's Vancouver or something, but that's the only thing I do out of state, and it's already in my contract that the council is going to support me in that.
And is that the history of the past years, the same thing? That's the only out-of-state conference you would attend?
Other than some in Vancouver, yeah. I mean, it's something just on the other side of the river, but otherwise, yeah.
All right, thank you.
So I have a related question, which is in the ICMA example, there is language about the ICMA, as an ICMA member, there's an ethical, there's a code of ethics that the city manager agrees to abide by in performing duties. That's not in this contract, but assuming you're a member of ICMA, is that something that we should have in the contract?
I'm not opposed to having it in there. I've always felt it was a little bit of, not fluff, but a little bit of chest pounding, like look at me kind of thing. And I'm not opposed to it. It's something that is used for the city council to have in there, but I don't feel I have any egotistical reasons to put it in there to say, I'm a member of ICMA, I have a code of ethics, here it is, look at me.
Maybe a good idea to bring the code, which I think is one page, to the council meeting so that.
Yeah.
We do that just for them to see.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to having it in there as like an addendum to the contract or something, it'd be fine. So.
Yeah, so I propose that we send this as amended, or as we've suggested to be amended to the council, let them react to it. But we vetted it. There's been some discussion of the severance, but I think that the entire council can make a decision based on this. But
what information, before you're making that recommendation, I don't know if there's a motion there, but as part of that, it would be helpful for Jim and I to know what material to send with it as well. About 90 pages of this 160-page packet was all background material for this. So if you feel like you can make the recommendation without all that background material, that'll save a lot of work from the council, which is, I think, the point of this committee, right, is to save the council having to drudge through all of this. So what information, if any, would you like with this other than an updated memo and an updated recommended contract? And the ICMA code of ethics,
Right.
which was mentioned.
I think the salary survey report was helpful. I mean, we don't maybe need all of the sections of that, but the ones, I think that was the.
it was a lot.
Or is it a lot?
It was a lot.
It's like 50-some pages.
I think
I only looked at a few
page
that,
32, Appendix C, maybe
Yeah.
is the one that
I think
it
that,
actually starts
yes,
getting to nitty gritty and has city managers.
yes.
Our
So we
side.
have just, is it possible to just have a few pages of that?
You could provide a link to it in the online
That's
version.
true. That's true.
Or in the staff memo, you can put a link to the survey report.
Mhm. And could we also link the ICMA employment agreement thing? If we can link that, that'll be,
I wonder if we should link them as like appendices to the staff report, like
Yeah.
for more information.
yeah, we could,
So that way you don't have to read this.
yeah.
Or the committee's already done that.
I think
But
that could be,
if you really want
just
to
to
dive
have
in,
access to it. That'd be good.
Well, yeah, for that matter, we can just send them a link back to this meeting packet, which is
Yeah.
everything.
yeah.
That's true.
My general caution is we don't want the city council to rework
Exactly.
all the work that
Right,
you've just gone through and read and
Right.
referenced and gone through, right? So
Right, exactly.
that was the point of sending it to the committee, was so that the council didn't have to do all of that.
Yeah. I think that the example agreement is helpful. Just so people have something to compare it to. But again, we don't need to recreate the whole package, and I guess that's so.
do we need a motion to send the amended back for consideration of the council?
Yeah.
So moved. I move that we send the amended contract employment agreement as it is, we have discussed here, back to the city council for approval.
And is there anything that you want to state in that packet, just for clarity? Because I think right now we're being rather nebulous about what we want included in that packet.
In the modification for the 60 days notice in advance, I had that down, is that not
Oh,
correct?
I guess I was thinking about what other stuff.
Including, oh, you mean in the amendment, in the motion?
I just think we haven't given the staff very much direction.
Did we not give you a draft enough direction on that?
I just listed everything that's in the packet.
Okay, so, but do we really want them, do we really want to give everything in the packet too?
But we'll do links to them.
Links to them, and then they'll have it available if they
I
want to.
think just saying, like you said, it's not necessary if you want more information.
Yeah.
It's helpful.
Yeah.
Simplest thing is just to provide them with a link to your packet.
Yeah,
That's fine.
that's true.
That's fine.
That would work.
Yeah, that'd be great.
With
So
a link to our packet, today's
I
packet.
will second that. So all in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Can I make sure that I got that right? Because there was a little bit of discussion in the middle of the motion. It's in the amended employment agreement back to the city council, including a link to your finance committee's meeting packet.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Motion made by Councilor Nielsen, seconded by myself.
And that's an amended one, right? So that, okay.
Okay, thank you for that discussion. That was great. Next, we're going to be discussing the Social Service Agency grant selection schedule. And I might need a minute just to get myself together now.
I can talk as you're looking there. So
Okay, go ahead.
this was just from Mike. We talked through time frame a little bit. We used to do these earlier in the year. It's a busy time of year, as you know, during budget season, especially for Mike to be balancing all this. We do more for these than what we used to do. It's a finance admin meeting, and there's prep for that goes into it. So with all of that, Mike really likes the idea of doing these after the budget's been adopted and just starting kind of a new schedule, new expectations with the recipients, that we're going to start that process more on this time frame that's been proposed. So we'll get the budget approved in June, and then in July, we'll give notice to the social service agencies that this is how much money we have, get your applications in, have the review done in August, and then have the final decision by the city council in September, and then the money will go out by the end of September. So he's just wanting to get approval from this committee that time frame works for you kind of from here going forward, rather than trying to do all this in March and April and May.
I like it. It was always a little bit awkward what we did previously. I was just kind of
Yeah.
staggered. We did something in April, May, and we did something else in July and August, and it was always a little awkward.
When you have people vie for funds that the budget committee, even the budget committee hasn't approved yet, let alone the city council, right? So I think this makes a little more sense, and it's going to take a little bit of pressure off the finance department to pull all of it together as well.
Does anyone have any concerns about that? Okay.
I will
Thank you.
report back to Mike that that's the direction we'll head.
Okay. We're going to have a discussion about the facade improvement program.
Okay, so we brought this last month, brought you back a little bit more information this month. This is the other half of the thick packet. So I gave you several examples of other cities that have these grant programs. You'll note that a lot of them are through urban renewal agencies, but not all of them. Some of these are from the city. Basically looking at, I think I intended 4 different programs or 5 different programs. I think it was 4, and then I bumped it up to 5 and didn't change the memo. So 5 different ones to take a look at. I do think that there is value in a loan program. I think there's much greater value in a grant program. And I think, again, depending on what kind of response we want to have and what the outcome we desire is, I'm still recommending that we look at doing the grant program, do a pilot project. I've said 3 in here. Pat, my planner, is saying just do 1 and make it for more money. Do a $20,000 one the first year and make it a big deal and help that make that your kind of promotion. And I kind of like, yeah, that kind of makes sense, but I'd rather get 3 done than 1 done, right? So it's like, I still like the idea of just do 3 the first year, make them still competitive. $10,000 is nothing to, shake a stick at. So let's I think 3 at 10,000, and then let's circle back and see how it went. But, by the end of the process, if we could have 3 businesses downtown that have put in at least 10,000 of their own money, probably more, and use the city grant, and we've got 3 brand new facades in the downtown core or in that commercial district, I think the city's going to be all the better for it, and that'll really set the table going forward. I recognize there's not an endless pot of money here, but we also don't have an endless number of businesses out on Main Street that would be, competing for these funds either. So, we have $100,000 in there, probably 110 at the end of the day. That gives you 11 grants that you could give out. So in my mind, I look at 11 businesses, 11 buildings in that downtown area that are going to have these nice facade improvements. I think that's money well spent. We're looking out 5 or 6 years from now. So my recommendation is there in the memo to look at these funds as this grant program to proceed. I did kind of rewrite how I would recommend that we go through the process of doing the selection. Some of the Timbertown elements were included as well that we'd be looking at. I did touch bases with an architect, a local architect in town. He's actually done work for the city in the past. He gave me a flat fee that he would charge. He said with 2 hours of his time, he would sit down with the property owner, building owner, business owner, for 2 hours of his time and about 3 to 4 hours of somebody he would contract with to do the renderings. He said in that 5-hour time frame for that dollar amount that I put in the memo, I don't have it right in front of me, and that would be part of the $10,000 if they're selected, right? So that's not 10,000 plus this additional, that rendering and part of that application, as well as I think I wrote in there up to 10% of that $10,000 could be used for additional planning or additional rendering, because they'll get that rendering. They're still going to have to do some additional work in order to prepare to get that done, and we want that to be able to be included as part of the money that we're giving them. So that's kind of how the project would roll out and how it would run. I know Councilor Andrade had concerns about the use of these funds before. And as we kind of talked through, there are other programs now that are available to property owners that weren't available back then that would be still eligible. I think this is a good use of these funds. So that's kind of wrap, but happy to answer your questions that you all have about the program and what it would look like.
One thing that came up recently, I like the idea of the grant. I like the idea of revolving loan programs, especially ones that come back to us relatively quickly. Recently heard from a local or potentially local business owner who was asking about landscaping and paving of a driveway or parking lots. I'm not really that interested in providing a grant program for those kinds of things, but I was thinking that what if we had a revolving loan program that we could use for something like that, that might beautify the city, but also would then come back to us within 3 years. Something I was a bit, it was brought up recently, so I just thought I'd ask. They wanted a grant.
Right. Yeah, I'm not opposed to. I think the reason that you don't typically see landscaping or parking lots included is because you want it to be some statue that's going to be there. Even if that business leaves, you're still going to have that facade on that building that's there for the next business to inherit. Parking lots, a beautified parking lot doesn't really beautify your city. It's going to wear out a lot quicker than the facade's going to. Yeah. It's going to need to be replaced. It's going to need to be redone. So that seems more like a maintenance type issue than a facade improvement issue. And, similar with landscaping. Landscaping will get you a long way. I just have a little bit of a hard time about grants for that. But if it was a loan, possibly, maybe you'd bump it up a little bit and make it there. I don't know if it's as appealing to do a loan for landscaping.
Maybe not.
But we could write it into it. I wouldn't be opposed to some type of revolving loan. The one thing about the loan that I made the argument for at the last meeting was there's a lot of tracking. You're putting a lien on the property. There may be some undesirable effects that come with a loan program as opposed to the grant program, which is pretty cut and dry. It's a one-time exchange, essentially. Get the receipt, you check, it qualifies, you make the payment, and you're done. There's a lot more tracking on the loan side of it, which it's got some finance time and everything, but it does get those funds back in again. So I don't know. I'm not opposed to the
If
concept.
interest rates are going to be high, the program might be more attractive
Sure.
than it is when money was nothing to begin with.
Yeah, that's true.
I was just wondering whether the 1-to-1 ratio would mean the $20,000, right? We'd put $10,000 grant and they come up with 10, matching 10. Is that correct, what I'm understanding? Would that 20,000 be enough to make a significant dent in the facade of the businesses? I mean, I don't know the cost of construction these days or how things are going up in regard. I have seen some of the streetscape budgets that we've had, and 20,000 doesn't seem like a phenomenal amount of money to make a marked difference in the facade of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if we're looking at, we really want to have it be a marked change, maybe we do need to think about, could we have a range from 10 to, instead of doing 3 10s, could you have a range for those that want to spend more than just their 10 to really make a, yeah, it is to 10, but could we not do a grant that could be matching funds?
So are we just making up numbers because we don't really know?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because, yeah, maybe it's fine.
Well, we know 10,000 won't get you as far as it would have gotten you 3 years ago, right? I mean, we know that.
Right.
It's not going to do a whole new facade. It's going to help pay for the windows for sure. You're paying what, $500 a window anymore, maybe $1,000 to get it and installed.
Yeah.
So if you've got 2 big windows or 3 or 4 big windows, I mean, it's going to definitely help. It's $10,000. They're not going to pay, but the 1-to-1 match is a minimum. I fully anticipate that people are going to have an $80,000 project that they want to do, or a $40,000 project they're going to do, and we're going to help them out with 10 of it. So I think the 1-to-1 is, even somebody just wanting a paint job, they might get that 1-to-1 ratio and be closer there, but I don't think that's going to be very competitive when you're going to have these others beside it that are vying for that same $10,000, and they're spending considerably more for a much bigger facelift. So I think that's the beauty of making it competitive, is that we're going to pick those ones that are going to have the biggest impact. All of that said, if you did want to do something, I'm not opposed to the work on the finance side. I mean, I'm poo-pooing the loan side a little bit just because from timing wise, when we've had this out there, it's not gone, but interest rates have been so low, as Jim's pointed out, that it hasn't been that attractive. You can go down to the bank and get a loan with, 3.5%, 4%. So what's the difference if the city's got one and you're paying off in 3 years? But if we were to do a longer term, or if you were to do maybe a partially forgivable, I'm just throwing out there, maybe you did up to $20,000 and 10 of it was forgivable. The other 10 was in the form of a loan, and that could be used for landscaping or other things. And you did like a 10-year payback or a 20-year payback instead of a 3-year payback. Now the terms are getting to where that's a lot more attractive than going down to the bank and taking out a loan at 7.5% or 9.5% payable in 3 years, right? So there may be other ways that we can tweak it. I wouldn't be opposed to putting more money out on the table. But I think that, I don't know, in my mind, the 10,000 is kind of sweet spot to be enticing enough to go for it, but not so enticing that that's all you're wanting is the 10, and you're not going to put anything really into it at minimum what you have to. So
Just want to enable people to do something that would make a difference.
Yeah.
Do something, that would make a marked difference.
If you did a 20,000 and half of it forgivable, payable over, even if you said 10 years at a no interest rate, I think you're still a very, very attractive offer.
And logistically, is that expensive for the city to manage a loan like that?
I mean, more than the grant, but again, you get $10,000 back, right? So for $1,000 or $6,000, I don't know that it divides out, but if you're talking about a $20,000 impact that you're making and you're getting half of that back over 10 years. So I'm not afraid of the work on the staff side. It's really about
$10,000 over 10 years. $10,000 over 1 year would be $800 a month. $10,000 over 10 years would be $80 a month.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Hello.
yeah, it seems like 3 or 5 years seems
Yeah, 5 years.
better for like a $10,000 loan, because then it's
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
that's just off the top of my head, but I'm sorry.
To clarify, I still don't think that we should be investing in businesses. Businesses are not people. I want to invest in the people, but I know that that's not going to get anywhere with this committee. So I will say that I am in favor of a loan program as opposed to a grant program, and potentially partially forgivable, whatever that looks like. I figured that's probably the first step, is figuring out grant or loan, and then get into the details from there.
Yeah.
And I think that anything helps, especially when you're talking about the people who own the businesses as being, especially the small business owners, anything helps when you're talking about people.
Yeah, and I think about people as well, and I want the economic benefit for the community, the local jobs, the local impact, people to be really proud of the community, and so that's what I think about in revigorating and revitalizing our downtown corridor with new facades and making it attractive and making it attractive to businesses. So it's all about getting people local jobs, getting a grocery store, getting enough people in town so they can actually afford a grocery store, make it feasible, and so it's all about people. Just how we choose to get there.
Because quite a few of our small business owners, I have quite a few friends that have businesses that live here, that I've taught their children and that are a part of our community. So I don't feel that we are in fact helping the people of Philomath when we help the businesses of Philomath in the major part. Yes, there are some businesses that do not reside, the business owners do not reside in our area, but there is a substantial amount that do, and individuals that work for them that do.
Yep.
So if we can support businesses and increase business in our town, in behalf of all of that, I do think that's a good thing.
I can't tell you, I mean, we all know how much people lamented when Enter Creek went under, right? Like, people love their local businesses that are just thriving and just that they're proud of.
Yeah.
They just love it. So, I can go either way. Like, I think the grant program is great. I just really like the concept of revolving loan programs. I know that they might be a pain in the butt to administer, but I'm not administering them, so conceptually, I love them.
And I think after the streetscape piece of crazy traffic and business being somewhat affected by streetscape, I think having maybe a combination of grant and loan, I think is a good piece of that.
And I'm thinking low interest, like a zero interest loan is fine. If it's coming back to us, it's fine. It's like no big deal.
If you go into zero interest, I would shorten the time frame up some, like you said, because your inflation's going to kill you, right? I'm at 10,000 today. You get it back 3 years later. It's not the same $10,000 it once was, right? It's maybe more like, well, depending on what inflation does, $600 or $700 is all. But at least it's coming back. So I could put together I don't think it would take much to tweak this a little bit and do a partially forgivable. If you said up to $20,000 and up to 10 of it would be forgivable, the loan portion outstanding would be paid back within 3 years at 0% interest rate. I think that's very attractive. And again, it's a lien. It's a, there's some things that they would have to go into, but they don't have to. They can just take the 10. If they want more than the 10, then anything over 10 would be a loan.
So if it's $15,000 project, they get 10,000 free, or are we doing a one-to-one match?
I think you still keep the one-to-one match. Yeah.
So it's 7,500, and 7,500 of it would be a loan, of interest-free loan.
Right.
Or if they want to go above that, they can pay for it themselves.
That's what I'm thinking.
How does that sit with others?
Either works for me.
Jessica?
Can you please repeat that one more time?
So it's a 50. So it's requires a one-to-one match. So it could be a $20,000 project. 10,000 of that would be a grant. 10,000 of that would be a zero interest loan for up to 3 years. Anything above that is on the business owner. But if it's a $10,000 project total, it'd be a $5,000 grant plus a $5,000 no interest loan.
So to clarify, it's not requiring a match.
Okay.
It requires a 1-to-1 match. That anything that the city gives is 50% grant, 50% loan.
Okay, so.
Whatever amount the city puts into, whatever our half is, half of it's grant, half of it's loan.
So in the first example, it would be a $40,000 project. Because it would be 10 and 10.
And 20 for the match.
Okay,
Right.
just wanted to clarify that.
No, that's a good clarification because it's, I think it's a little bit different than what I've stated, so.
That sounds good to me.
That's me as well.
And actually, in some ways, it entices that $40,000 project more than the 10, right? Because now you're talking about $20,000 of free money. I got to pay 10 of it back over 3 years, but I got $20,000 the city's come to town with, and I only got to come up with the other 20. So now we're enticing that $40,000 project as opposed to a $20,000 project that we're enticing with only 10. So, and we're going to get that 10 back within the time. So I like that a lot. I think that's better.
And so the maximum would be a $20,000 project or payout with a $10,000 loan.
Yep.
Okay. Fine. That sits well with me. Jessica? All right. Moving on.
I'll write that up. I'll bring it back to the, do you want me to take it to the council?
Yes, please.
Lay it out like that?
Okay. Are we going to talk about the specifics of the application?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, just tell me what we want to see and I can make tweaks.
Yeah, did you have any suggestions?
I think it would be helpful to direct people directly to the building material guide, because I know that you have like listed examples and say, but not only that, you can do other things as well. Having that linked somewhere would be cool. And then I also don't feel comfortable, especially with this amount of money, for it to only be approved by the review committee. I think the final approval should be by city council.
How does everybody else feel about that? Because that was a bit intentional, just to get the project approved by the council, get the funding approved by the council, and then let staff administer it. And staff, in this case, would be staff plus members of that review committee.
Who's on the review committee?
On the last page.
Yeah, who could put it here?
Sorry.
City manager, city planner, chamber of commerce director, planning commissioner, and city councilor. It's number 4 of the application process.
Got it. Do we know that the Chamber of Commerce director, are we compensating her for their time on that? Or?
Yeah, I was going to put director or board member. Something I don't know if the board president would want to do that or member of the board, but I was thinking of putting instead of Chamber of Commerce director, I'd say Chamber of Commerce representative rather than director.
I'm just wondering, still, regardless of that.
I think we would get somebody there to volunteer their time. I think they'd want to be involved in this.
Got it. And a city councilor, you said?
Yeah, city manager, city planner, Chamber of Commerce, planning commissioner, and then a city council member.
Yeah. I don't really want to micromanage this.
I don't either.
For city council. I am curious to know what the rest of the council thinks about it, but I'm not really, that's not how I like to do things personally, but.
Why don't I leave it as is, Councilor Andrade, and if you want to I'll include in my memo that there was concern about opening it up to the council to review.
Okay.
Then we can have the discussion at the council level.
That
Right
sounds
there.
good.
Yeah.
And then a couple other things, there's just some formatting things. There's on conditions and considerations, the first bullet point, right before the last sentence, there needs to be a space between permits and matching. There needs to be a space deleted from architectural guidelines, that first sentence after existing structures, between that and the comma.
Yeah.
And then the third bullet point within architectural guidelines, there's the space that needs to be deleted, right? Or enter, whatever.
I was doing some copy pasting from other documents. So yeah, I got caught up in some formatting here. Yeah, I'll go through check. I'm seeing at least 2 different fonts in here too that I can fix. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think there was to clarify, it says matching funds must be a cash contribution in either design materials, labor, or other hard construction costs. I guess you wouldn't need the either since it's more than 2 things in the list. I guess it's a grammar thing, but to clarify, that's as opposed to a person's time.
Right.
And, okay,
We didn't want a property or business owner to submit their time
okay.
to the project as something that could be reimbursable.
Okay, then in that case, I might just put a period after cash contribution, just to make it clear.
Okay.
And I feel like there's one more thing. There's 2 more things. Location and use of eligible projects, the second sentence, mixed use buildings with residential use on the upper floors. Or it says and the upper floors.
The second line.
The second sentence of location, of the second paragraph
Okay.
of location.
Non-conforming residential use building with a commercial zone are not eligible.
Mixed-use buildings with residential use, and then it says and the upper floors and commercial use on the first floors.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So mixed-use buildings with residential use. Yeah, should be.
On the upper floors.
On or in, either one works.
Yeah, on the upper floors. Yeah. Thank you.
And then I believe this is the last one. I would feel more comfortable having something stated exactly for applications will be received 1 to 2 times per year with appropriate notice and time. If we could say something like 6 months, or I don't know what would be enough time, but.
Well, and I wasn't sure on this one, and we can shore that up a little. I just wanted.
With the council.
Yeah, it was more if we do it this first time on the pilot project, how soon after the pilot project do we want to do it? Do we want to decide now that we're not going to do it again for another year?
Okay.
Or if we get a pilot in and it's fairly quick, the council may want to go out sooner, and in which case I'd come to the council and say, we're ready to start again. But I'm trying to be careful not to treat this like an annual thing that we're just going to do every year, because there's limited funding, right? And unless the city council is going to appropriate other funds from somewhere to this project, I don't want to say that we're going to do it annually. It's going to be, we're going to do it and we'll provide proper notice before we do it, but it may not be an annual thing, right? So, but I can wordsmith that a little bit to try to express that.
Thank you. Yeah, just to say something like.
With the appropriate notice will be given.
4 months prior to the application release or whatever.
Right, got it.
So,
Yeah, good point.
Okay, so we happy with that? Ready to send that to the council with those amendments?
Great suggestions.
Thank you.
What do y'all think of the Timbertown examples?
Good.
I think it's good.
It'd be nice to see some changes.
Yeah. So next, we're going to talk about illegal camping ordinance preview, and maybe Catherine, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so I asked Chris if I could bring this before you guys, less in your finance committee roles and more in like the administrative committee, because this isn't necessarily going to have a financial impact, but it is going to impact staff time and how the city is going to respond to this legislation that came out in the 2021 regular session.
Yeah.
2 of these, there's 2 things that are here. One is ORS 195505, which is requiring cities to establish policies for the removal of illegal camps. That's something that can happen as a city policy with the chief of police. It's not necessarily something that has to go in the municipal code, but talking with Chief Rubin, I think that we could prefer to be in a municipal code section that is created specifically to address illegal camping. The second one, though, is the main reason why we're here. That's ORS 195530. And that's the reasonable time, place, manner restrictions on sitting, sleeping, or lying down in public. And in the memo that was included for you guys, the city attorney's office is suggesting that that an ordinance is adopted that makes changes to the municipal code chapter regarding parks and creates a whole new municipal code chapter regarding illegal camping. And the idea being that, and the reason I'm bringing it before you here in this committee is that we're asking that you delegate, or suggesting that you delegate authority to the city manager to create locations or designate locations where people can sit, sleep, or lie down when the parks are closed overnight, because as I've been here and listened to the community comments, city council making comments as other things are discussed, there's a preference, it sounds like, to keep parks closed during the nighttime. However, looking at all of the municipal code that is currently in existence, the city attorney's office is of the opinion that changes need to be undertaken so that we're not going to run afoul of this law, which comes into effect on July 1st. The idea being that we need to make sure that there's a location that a person can sit, sleep, or lie down on public property if they don't have anywhere else to go, where them being on that piece of public property is not going to result in either a criminal citation or a fine. So the idea being that if the city attorney's office and the delegated authority to city manager, we can work together to kind of tweak and refine those things as we're moving through this rapidly developing new law, because it comes into effect on July 1, but what it's doing is it's creating a whole new legal standard for this reasonable time, place, manner restriction with respect to a person experiencing homelessness. And so I've been in conversations with Chris about this in terms of what does that even mean. And it's kind of ambiguous because it is this new legal term. And so obviously council is the one that would need to delegate this authority, and I would be going before council making the same recommendation. But I want to bring it before you guys, because if the city council is of the opinion they don't want to delegate that authority, that's going to result in either two different outcomes. One being that either we simply allow and do not criminalize or enforce the kind of provisions we have with respect to a person that does sleep in a park when it's closed, or we need to work with council to create a whole new ordinance that would be tens of pages long, which sets out standards for when certain places would be available to people, the times that they would be open, thinking about when we're approaching the winter season versus the summer season, if people are going to be sleeping in parts of the very park that are prone to flooding, we want to be able to have contingencies so that if there are weather conditions or other natural phenomena that are occurring that make that unsafe, we're not having to come before council in an emergency meeting to have you guys change where those locations are. So that's kind of, and I can talk more about it if you guys have more questions about that, but the idea being that this would be a delegation for the city manager to administer, and if not, then I need to make sure that council's aware of what that would look like, and that's kind of the two alternatives. Either council takes it into their own hands and we're, creating this very long ordinance, or we're kind of letting things lie and just going with our 72-hour camp removal notice process. So.
Thank you for that.
And I just am asking that you put it on an agenda item before council, and then I would retweet some of the memo and remove all of the comments that's in the parks chapter section where it shows where I've indented all the stuff kind of like that.
Personally, I am very, very happy to have to delegate that authority to city manager. That definitely seems like the path of least resistance, and flexible enough that we can be humane in acknowledging the struggles that folks face in any given week or day. So that's my perspective.
And I think in regards to emergency, I think it makes much more efficiency if it's not rather than waiting for the next council meeting or having emergency meetings or other things. It seems much more effective. And could it also, this way, with giving the city manager, we could always in the future, as things kind of unroll and we see what this becomes, could we not then go back and say, let's look at this with new eyes, being as now that we see, because it seems a little muddy as far as the understanding of what exactly, just my own personal opinion of hearing things. But maybe as the time goes on, we'll be able to see what the needs are and what the actual laws are and how they're unfolding, and then we can make a more informed decision as a council?
Certainly doable. The portion of the proposed ordinance that would give that delegated authority is a single section, and it basically says the city council is delegating to the city manager the authority to create these policies, establish these locations, and then what that does, or what that tells our office, is that we then work with city manager in terms of making sure that there's some discretionary immunity, and that whatever policies he's working or thinking about instituting are actually going to not run afoul of these laws, and make sure that it would actually be a workable thing for the staff and all of that. And so then that way we're not sitting at council meetings or having emergency council meetings as we're working through that. And that some of these changes, especially to the park section, were a result of me going through there. And since I already had it in my hands, I was making, we're removing all the shalls and putting in, less ambiguous language, but also putting in sections about when I was going through there, realizing that there isn't a lot of structure for a lot of information for a person that might be wanting to get a permit for the parks anyway. And then also, so it's going to give more information to people that might seek to use the park for a recreational activity, such as pointing out one of the pavilions, or having a barbecue or things like that, versus someone that I want to see if it's okay for me to go out and stuff. So it was focused, not just on this, but a bunch of changes all at once that as time has gone on, I've listened to people talk. I suggested as also instituting, so 2 birds, 1 stone, and that way I've looked at all of that too.
Councilor Andrade?
To clarify, the previous conversations that we had with council about potentially designating an area and stuff like that. So does that mean we would leave all of that to the city manager?
So when you delegate authority, I think I try to include things in there about, when you delegate that authority, you can control places he's allowed to institute those approved locations for sitting or sleeping. And so, for instance, council might say, not within X amount of feet of some natural feature, not within X amount of feet of the city hall, within 300 feet, I guess, of the river or some other wetland, something that, it's a protected natural area. Council doesn't want them to put it there anyway. And, that way it's in the code, and that's not, the city manager would be violating that delegated authority and could be liable for those reasons if they decide to. So that's something you can do. You can kind of, box in what that delegation is, and we can kind of work with that. But also, the idea being that this is supposed to be a kind of flexible thing, and so if you have very strong feelings, or they kind of general broad, not these locations. So, for instance, the school district owns all of the schools. That's not considered public property. The schools are already outside of where it's public property that's open to the public. So we're not having to worry about, people going on school property or that, those kind of things. So that's something that
Maybe the tennis court should be the exception.
or recreation fields where it's a city recreation program, and so we don't necessarily want it on those recreation fields, but other places in recreation parks, so that would be okay. But that's again, something that the city manager would be looking at when he's going through this process of, okay, we're going and trying to get immunity for the city, also balancing the concerns for what the other people, like what the rest of the community would want to have that land available for. And that's kind of why, if you look at the purpose section in chapter 12.10 about what's the purpose of this approach chapter, I've kind of spruced that up with looking at language about maximum enjoyment, trying to make sure that people are being protected, but we're also ensuring that people can utilize these for as many different activities by as many different types.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because we had talked about certain places and concerns and stuff before, and I just wasn't sure if that was completely tossed out or not.
Did you want to, I think it'd be better to talk about those now than in the council meeting if we are able to give any direction, if you have any concerns.
I just meant that we had already talked about those concerns. And then I don't remember the outcome of this, but I thought we were potentially going to have a town hall about houselessness. Was that the decision, and if so, like / work session?
So this is gonna go to a public hearing, and so people will be able to comment on it. It's an agenda item that'll have the opportunity for people to make commentary.
But it's maybe a little more narrow. That's on the ordinance. I think houselessness is just a much broader topic than this one thing.
And I can't remember the results of that, if anyone remembers and could enlighten me.
I just remember being put out there as a potential topic, but I don't think we decided on when to do it or what. It was just more, it was an avenue that we could do to have the conversation about homelessness in Philomath. But I think this would be like an important topic for that discussion or as part of that. But we haven't settled on anything yet, but we can.
Any further discussion you want to recommend to the, move this to the council, delegating authority to the city manager?
I so move.
Okay. Okay. So motion made by Councilor Nielsen, seconded by Councilor Andrade. All in favor, please advance. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next thing on the agenda is, and Catherine, did you get everything you need from us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so you've pretty much got the, exactly what's gonna go before council at this point, just some minor facelifting. So you got that one ordinance where it shows all the formatting that I did.
Thank you. Last thing on the agenda is the Business Oregon Job Creation Grant Review.
Yeah, this is pretty quick. This will come to the full council, kind of similar to this last one. I just wanted you to get eyes on it first. I said in the memo, this is a grant that the city's receiving really for the benefit of the Northern Wood development, right? So this is a requirement that they have as part of their development on their side, is that they need to connect this water to loop the system, and they need to provide their sidewalk along 19th Street. They were looking for any ways that they could help save a little bit of money up front with these projects. Projects always are more expensive at the end of the project than at the beginning of the project. And so I reached out to Business Oregon. We started conversations, found out about this grant program. The trick with the grant is it has to be city-owned facility and it has to be done by the city. So we can't get the money and just give it to Northern Wood and have them do the project. It actually has to be a city project. It has to be done at, prevailing wage, all of that. So there's a little bit of cost to the city as far as the staff time goes. I think it's well worth it if we can help a business, a couple businesses locally with this new campus. So I think that's the cost to the city. It's just kind of some of the administrative, this as well as the application process itself, which was a little bit of timely, but that's money I've already put into it. So my recommendation to the council, pending any comments from this body, is going to be to approve receiving this grant from Business Oregon and directing Public Works to prepare the loan document, or the bid documents, put this out to bid, and get the project done. The big caveat on all of this is that they've switched engineers. Their new engineer does not like the idea of building big retaining walls in the wetland corridor and putting a sidewalk and a big railing along the side of it. So they're looking at some other options that'll have a lighter touch on the environment, which I think everybody will be in favor of. That may be like not necessarily floated, but maybe like an elevated planks, and they may not be completely adjacent to the roadway, but maybe a way to connect the ADA connectivity without being right on the roadway, but maybe onto their property more. So we're developing that idea a little bit more, kind of like a sort of like a boardwalk of some sort is what they're looking at. So it would be outside of our normal design standards, but if we can point to being environmentally conscious and trying to avoid wetland impact and all those things, and we still can meet ADA requirements and still have the maintenance conditions we're looking for. We're working with them on that process right now, so we do not have a good cost on that sidewalk figure yet. But nonetheless, we need to get the grant approved to let Business Oregon know that we're willing to accept those funds and then continue to work with the developer and their engineer on what it's actually going to look like. But our cap is the 370. That's based on the number of new jobs that they anticipate to be created. What you will also see at the city council meeting, hopefully, is an agreement between the city and Northernwood that says, in 3 years, when Business Oregon comes and checks to see how many new jobs have been created, if you haven't hit your mark and they ask the city for some compensation in return, those jobs that weren't created, we're going to be looking to Northernwood to give us that money back. So the funds, the 370, are tied to the number of jobs that they tend to create over this time period. If they don't do it, Northernwood's going to be on the hook for that, not the city.
And that can be legally done so that they will be liable to pay that.
Yep. So you'll see that agreement.
Security interest of some kind against them.
Okay.
So the council will see that as well. We just don't have it for this meeting, but that'll be part of that agreement. It'll be conditional upon that getting signed as well. And Northernwood gets it, they're on board. They're very, very happy that the city's been willing to step in and help them. I think it's a great example of the city really trying to help our local businesses as they're growing. You know, a lot of economic development is the ones you hear in the newspaper are swinging for the fence and get these big industries to come into your town and create all these new jobs. But the reality is what most happens in economic development is this grow your own philosophy where you help new business owners go from their garage out onto some small shop, out onto Main Street, and then eventually create a facility like they have here. And anything that the city can do to help promote that and encourage that and encompass that is going to help. New jobs are not just new money coming into the city. Those are new people that are coming to town, or people that are in town that are able to find a job in town. And they don't have to travel to Corvallis to have a great paying engineering job. They can come to Philomath and do that. All that's possible with the city helping support these campuses get up and going. So with pretty low cost to the city and pretty low risk, I think this is a great investment for us to help support Northernwood.
And who did you say, could you repeat again who it is that monitors the hiring of the job creation?
Business Oregon.
Business Oregon.
Yeah,
does
Business
that
Oregon sees the
evaluation?
grants through, and then they'll follow up. They follow up annually, but I believe the time frame in the grant was 3 years that they've got to hit their target.
Or 8 consecutive calendar quarters,
Right.
ending no later than 3 years after project completion date.
So it could be as early as 2 years, but no more than 3 years. So
And you don't foresee that Northernwood would be in disagreement with that contract?
no, that was all discussed with them before we applied for the grant, so they understood that provision.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't ask me if I think that they're going to hit those numbers or not.
No, I
That
just
is-
wanted.
That's completely on them, but they've felt like they were being very conservative on their numbers they were proposing. I think that they anticipate great things for that site, as do I.
That's a good thing.
So, anything we need to do?
No action, just an FYI, but I'm happy to, I guess the big thing is there, other than the agreement between the city of Northernwood, the agreement or the acceptance between Business Oregon and the city of Philomath, I'm not going to have the plans for what the sidewalk's going to look like. I didn't think it was necessary to show plans for the water line. It's a water line. So unless there's anything else you feel I need to bring to the council, I'll plan to just bring what I brought to you, plus the agreement between us and Northernwood. Okay.
That's good.
There's one more thing I wanted, on that facade improvement program, Grant,
Yeah.
is there some minimum dollar amount for that loan that makes sense? Rather than just doing 50/50? But
Yeah. And I saw your wheel spinning when I said that. Yeah, you tell me.
I don't know, just something to think about.
Think about the administrative costs, that
Yeah.
it's a $250
Exactly. Like,
loan and grant.
what's the minimum loan part?
The $1,000 project, that's,
Well, the original concept was at 10. So if it was up to 10 as grant and anything over 10 as loan, but I guess your point is if that loan amount only ends up being another $300 or $400, then yeah.
Maybe the $5,000 loan is like, seems reasonable, like the smallest loan.
Sure, we can go with that.
I don't know, I just,
Council discussion.
Yeah, that's true.
Let me write, I think let me talk to Mike a little bit on that. He's got some experience running these in
Okay.
wherever he was before.
yeah,
A place that shan't be named in
Something
public
to be
meetings
thinking
anymore. Yeah, let me talk to him a little bit and we'll write something up and I'll include it in the memo.
yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time, and, your commitment to the city, but with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Jim's already adjourned, but.
I have to hand back my borrowed power supply,
Ah.
which is now burned